Right, for you guys who've got a bit sick of me talking about the Nintendo Switch, I apologise, but unfortunately I'm having to talk about it yet again today. And the reason for that is because I've been fielding a few comments from what can only be described as fanboys about the Switch, and I've been listening to some irrational shit, quite frankly. First off, I have to say, I'm not talking about people like God of 008 who I talk to on Discord, or even my mate Rich, who are Nintendo fans and like Nintendo consoles and Nintendo games. A lot of us like Nintendo games. I'm not a huge fan, but I can see why they're popular. But the people I'm talking about here are the out-and-out, card-carrying, genuflecting fanboys. The people who get down on their knees every time Nintendo fart. And they're starting to piss me off, quite frankly, because they talk shit. And they talk shit constantly. So let's just have a look at some of the things that I've heard recently. And the first one is, the Switch isn't underpowered. Except, of course, it is. If you look at it as a handheld, then no, obviously it's not underpowered. But then you hear that, Nintendo are going to carry on putting out the 3DS. So is it going to be competing with the 3DS? I don't know. It's demonstrably underpowered for a home console. It can't put out 1080p consistently. It certainly can't put out 4K. It's basically running on a Tegra chip. And that's mobile tech. Now, people come out and say all sorts of stuff about it's capable and so on and so forth. And then you look at the footage of Zelda. And frankly, it doesn't look all that. Not when you compare it against the games that are on the PlayStation and the Xbox. So you show that the thing simply hasn't got the power. And then they come back with, well, power isn't everything. Then you say that, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. It's not everything. But if you're not having a powerful enough console, it's not going to get third-party support. And if it's not going to get third-party support, it's not going to get the sort of traction that it requires in order to be a very popular and successful console. At which point you then hear, people don't buy Nintendo for third-party. But then I throw back and I say, well, hold on a minute. They're not buying for third-party, but wouldn't they if it was powerful enough? If you could go out and buy the Nintendo Switch and it would play all the games that were available at a decent quality, then you would buy the third-party games on it, wouldn't you? The reason people don't buy third-party games on the Nintendo is because it's not bloody powerful enough. And then you hear, but Nintendo doesn't actually need third-party games anyway. It'll sell on its first party. Well, okay, but that's not what Nintendo are saying, is it? They're saying they've made a great effort to encourage third-party to get involved. Never mind the fact that the third-party developers that came on at their conference looked very sheepish and like they didn't want to be there. But hey, let's let that one ride. There's no way a console will be successful with the general gaming public if it doesn't have third-party. Rich at Review Tech said this a few times, that most people don't go out and buy every console. They go out and buy one console. And the one console they will buy will be the one console that they perceive will offer them the most options. The console that will give them the best bang for their buck. People haven't got money to throw away, and unless you're a gaming enthusiast, you're not going to go out and buy a Switch. Why would you? If you can't get all the games that you want on it, why would you bother? And okay, that's true to a lesser degree of both Xbox and PlayStation. You can't get every single game on both those consoles. But they've got a wide enough gamut of third-party games that you can actually make an informed choice and decide to go for one or the other. And that's what most people have done. They've either gone for the Xbox or they've gone for the PlayStation. Why would they give those up now for a console that is less powerful and cannot run the third-party games? And then you hear, yeah, but people don't actually care about power. Well, well, we've covered that to some degree, but, let me put it very plainly and very clearly. They do if it means that the console can't run the fucking games. If you can't run Titanfall or Watch Dogs or all those other games on the console, and those are games that you're interested in, you're not going to buy the Switch. The only reason you would be buying the Switch at this stage would be if you are specifically a Nintendo fan and you want the Nintendo first party. Because even if these games do run on the Switch, they're not going to run as well. And I'll get to one of the other problems about that in a moment. But of course, you also hear, along with the power argument, people don't really care about graphics. Do they not? If they don't care about graphics, how come people are buying modern consoles then? And they want the newer games with the better looking visuals? Because I know loads of people, and even people who say they don't care about graphics. And then you go around their house and they're saying, oh, look how good that looks. Of course we care about graphics, for fuck's sake. If you're not bothered about graphics at all, why not read a fucking book? Because most books don't have graphics in, unless you're reading graphic novels, of course. But the reality is that when you play a game, part of the experience of playing a game are the visuals. To pretend that that's not the case is basically living in cloud cuckoo land, or maybe the Mushroom Kingdom, I don't know. Then you hear, well, it's sold out on the day of release, so it's bound to be successful. Well, have you ever heard of what happens with films on their opening weekend? All the marketing hype gets them moving, and then word of mouth kicks in. So if the word of mouth kicks in on the Switch, which it seems to be doing already, they might find they have a difficult time of it moving into the future. And I'll be honest here, the last time I checked, it hadn't sold out in the UK, and as I'm recording this, Amazon are taking pre-orders right now. I even heard one guy say that it would crush the PS4. Yeah, okay. Dream on. You know, the PS4 is currently on track to outsell the PS2, for crying out loud. How on earth is the Switch going to catch it? Given, let's be honest, it's basically a handheld. If it catches it, well, great for Nintendo. But, well, I'll be extremely surprised. I've been known to be wrong before, but this one's a stretch. Then you hear, well, the Switch is new tech, so stop moaning about its price. New tech. Okay. Well, yeah, they say that new tech's always expensive, and yes, obviously it is, early adopters and all that, except for there's one slight problem there. It isn't new tech. Nvidia's been using the Tegra X1 in the Shield TV for over a year. Nothing in the Switch is new. They go on about the Joy-Cons as if there's something new going on there, but we had basically the same technology in the Wiimotes. Okay, they might have refined it, but it's the same tech. And if you think it isn't, then you've got your head up your arse. I'm sorry. As I said before, nothing in the Switch is new. And then, going back to talking about games being able to run on the machine, there's another problem with that. And that's the amount of storage capacity the thing's got. And you hear people saying, oh, 32 gigabytes is perfectly adequate because the games come on cartridge. To which I answer, digital downloads. And then I go on to say, GTA 5. And why do I say GTA 5? Well, because GTA 5 is an older game that you would hope would run quite well on the Switch. Except for there's one other slight problem, in that it's 49 gig. Well, good luck shoehorning 49 gig onto a 32 gig storage capacity. Oh yes, but you can get SD cards. Oh yeah? 49 gig. So if you're buying a decent size SD card, 49 gig's going to take up, what, half of it? Or you're going to go out and buy a 256 gig micro SD card, because it's micro SD, let's not forget that, micro SD. The last time I checked, the cheapest micro SD card at 256 gig was £109.99 on Amazon. £109.99, and you're going to need more than one of them if you start putting large games like GTA 5 on. But oh, you don't have to worry about that because you can get 1 terabyte SD cards. Yeah, really? Well, one, they don't exist yet, and as I've just said, 256 gig costs £109.99. How much do you think a 1 terabyte SD card, and let's be clear about this, micro SD card, which is going to take longer to come and will be more expensive when it arrives, how much do you think that's going to cost? This console's starting to look rather expensive, isn't it? And then, of course, we get to the online service. And we already know the stuff about the using a phone to communicate, and that's all weird, if you ask me, a bit strange. But people say things like, it's a good idea that Nintendo have had, allowing you to have one NES or SNES game a month, because if it comes out in that month, everybody will be playing it, and now it's got the online feature. So then, Everybody be playing it at the same time. Well, flip that over. Does that mean that when they have to buy it, they don't want to bother with it? Wouldn't they keep playing it if the game remained free? Or do Nintendo not have enough confidence in their products, in their games, in their retro? I mean, come on. Do you really think that's a good argument for having this game only available for a month? Because that way you'll have more people playing it? Is that really, come on, is that really a good argument? Well, I'll leave it up to you guys to decide on that one. And then you hear, the peripherals aren't expensive. And then I go and look up the price of the replacement dock and it's $90 or around £80. Just for a lump of plastic. Let's be clear about that. A lump of plastic with an HDMI connector, a USB connector and a power connector. If you put HDMI on the Switch itself, you wouldn't even need the dock. You know, the K1 Shield tablet doesn't require a dock, and nor do many of the other gaming tablets out there. Even the cheap Chinese thing that I've got doesn't require a dock. And that'll play all my retro stuff as well. But then you hear, ah yes, but the dock means that Nintendo can easily upgrade the machine at a later date to 4K. That's one of the arguments I hear. But that doesn't negate the fact that the Switch can't be plugged into a TV without a dock. And if you can't plug it into the TV without a dock, it means no taking it with you on holiday and plugging it into your hotel room. But maybe I'm missing a trick there. Surely if it's a portable that can be used as a home console, you want to be able to use it when you get somewhere else. And then somebody said, and this was hilarious, but that's the same for the Xbox One and the PS4. Seriously. You're telling me that when I say that you can't take the Switch with you and plug it in to another TV, that's the same as the Xbox One and the PS4? Let me just be clear here a moment. The Xbox One and the PS4 don't sell themselves as portables or hybrids. They are home consoles that sit under your television. You can take your tablet or whatever with you when you want to use mobile stuff. Oh, hold on a minute. And those tablets plug into the telly, unless you're buying the Switch tablet, which requires the dock. Do you get where I'm going with this? So we're looking at these peripherals and you hear, wow, the PlayStation Move is more expensive than the Joy-Cons. Well, actually, they're not. They're around about the same price. But yeah, the PlayStation Move is too expensive. So what? I'm quite happy to moan about PlayStation when I get around to talking about PlayStation and some of the prices there. I'm quite happy to talk about Xbox and moan about some of the problems with Xbox as well. But we're talking about the Switch here. And saying that one thing is as expensive as another thing doesn't mean that the first thing you're talking about isn't still too expensive. Just because the PlayStation Move controllers are too expensive too, I'm sorry, it just isn't an argument. And then you hear, well, even if these things are a bit expensive, you don't need some of these things in the box. I'm quite happy the way they are. You don't need a charging grip in the box. Well, you might not, but a lot of people will. If you haven't got a Pro controller and play primarily at home, you might not want to take the Joy-Cons off the grip to charge them. And frankly, it's a principle thing as far as I'm concerned. It's cheap of Nintendo not to include the charging grip in the box. It would have cost them nothing, let's be honest. So stop defending them. It would have cost them nothing. It just means that you want to go out and buy this charging grip, or a lot of people will. And if your argument is that you don't need the charging grip, why the fuck have Nintendo released one then? Obviously they think there's a market for it. So you can't have it both ways. Either we need one or we don't. Either it's a potential sale or it isn't. And if it's something that people might want, why isn't it there in the box? As I say, it would cost them nothing to do that. It's just cheap. And then while we're on the subject of controllers, you hear, well, the Pro controller is better than the Xbox One or the PS4 controllers. Really? How is it better than the Xbox One or PS4 controllers? Given that it doesn't even have analog triggers. Good luck playing driving games other than Mario Kart with it. It's more expensive than the standard controllers on the Xbox One and the PS4 as well. And, as I've just said, it's substandard when you compare it to them. It might have a couple of gimmicks on board that they haven't, but let's be honest. How often do you use those things? You know, the touchpad on the DualShock 4, how often do you use it? These things are pretty much superfluous. You want a standard controller to do its job as a standard controller and be a reasonable price. I think the PS4 and the Xbox One controllers are too expensive. And if they're too expensive, and they have analog triggers, well, obviously the Pro controller is too expensive too, isn't it? But no, obviously not, no, because it's got a Nintendo badge on it, so it's okay. And then I hear, and this one's even funnier, the Pro controller is cheaper than the Xbox Elite controller, and just as good. Do I really need to answer that one? Do I? Someone in the comments answer that one for me, because I'm not even going to bother with that one. So that's the controllers and the peripherals. And then you hear, the games lineup is good for a launch. And I respond with a port of Zelda from the Wii U, one to Switch, which, will anyone bother with that? And 3 other games that I can't even be bothered to remember. And Zelda's also being released without all its content, unless you buy the Season Pass. Because a difficulty mode shouldn't be in a Season Pass. It shouldn't be behind a paywall. This isn't a good lineup, come on. And I know you'll say, oh, well, the Xbox One, the PS4, oh, they've had bad lineups in the past as well, blah, blah, blah. And the lineups weren't very good when they were released. No, they weren't. Is that an excuse? There's still better lineups than we've got for this thing. I mean, unless you're a fan of Zelda, and frankly, I'm not actually a big fan of Zelda, what is there for you to play on launch? Really? Seriously, come on. What is there for you to play on launch? So then, once you put this forward, you get, well, the reason the game's lineup isn't good is because of Zelda. It's a release title and nobody will be buying any other games, so it would be pointless to release other games at the same time. Well, there's a kernel of an argument there, because I've argued that, you release too many games at the same time, it becomes all choked up and people can't buy everything at once. But this is a launch. You want to have some variation at launch, don't you? You want a little bit of diversity so that everybody has got something they might want to play, like a, I don't know, racing game or something, or a shooter or something. It doesn't have to be a hardcore shooter. It could be, anything. There's a dearth of content at launch. And the argument that, oh, wow, Nintendo are going to release a few throughout the course of the year to keep people interested. Well, that's fine if you're interested in Zelda, but like I say, not everybody is. Then I hear, but Zelda's Game of the Year. Hold on, it's not been released yet, so how's it Game of the Year? And I think a lot of people might take issue with that statement, especially if, we haven't seen the thing. And if you look at it, in terms of what it offers, it could turn out to be Game of the Year, but it could also turn out to be an empty space that doesn't offer very much. And we don't yet know until we get to play it. And then I hear, and Splatoon. Well, Splatoon isn't a launch day game for a start off. I hear that it isn't just a port, except independent games journalists have said that it pretty much is the same game as the original Splatoon, with a few extra costumes and some different weapons. And it might turn out to be more than that, but again, it isn't a launch day game. I hope it turns out to be good, but at this stage, trying to apologise for it and trying to give reasons for it not being a real sequel, not being a true sequel, and saying it is a true sequel when you don't really know, and I don't really know that it isn't. But from what we know, it looks like it might just be a patched version with a few extra bits thrown in. And then you hear, but Sony and Microsoft pull this all the time with the likes of Call of Duty. Yeah, they do. And that pisses me off too. And that's why I haven't bought Call of Duty for 3 years. So don't think that I'm not critical of that either. I would just hope that Nintendo wouldn't go down that route. And we've seen with the DLC for Zelda and with this nonsense with Splatoon, potentially, that they are going down that route of going with the DLC and stuff being locked behind paywalls and iterative upgrades year on year. And I hope it doesn't happen, but that looks like where they are going. And to try and argue and make excuses for them, it just doesn't hold up, I'm sorry. Oh, I listen to people talking and saying these things, and it drives me insane because it's apologetics. It's like talking to a religious nut who won't hear anything said about their religion. And going back to the third parties, and I said that there's a problem with the third parties with the space on the Switch and the power of the Switch, and we've been through that. But people say, oh yeah, but it's got 50 third-party developers working on Switch games. Well, it might. You know? We heard this with the Wii U. Reggie talked about support for the Wii U in an almost identical way to how he's talking about the Switch now. If the Switch is successful, if it sells like hotcakes, of course the developers will develop for it. They're not stupid. They'll go where the money is. But if it's not selling well, do you really think these 50 third-party developers will still be around in a year's time or 2 years' time? Do you? Do you really? Ah, but the buzz is great around the Switch, so it's bound to be successful. Well, I don't know where you've been, but not outside the Nintendo wind tunnels it isn't. Even people who are trying to be positive, and I even tried to make a positive video myself about it, I had trouble making a positive video about it. You know, there's a lot of negativity, fairly or unfairly, there's a lot of negativity, and a lot of that negativity is caused by Nintendo itself with its utterly moronic attitude towards gamers and YouTubers. So you've got this kind of polarised situation where you've got people who are fully paid up members of the Nintendo church who are going on about everything Nintendo's perfect and everything Nintendo's wonderful. And the rest of us out here, the minute we make any criticisms, we're slammed by Nintendo fanboys. And that's not healthy. We want to have a reasonable debate about what's good and what's bad. And the problem is, the minute, like I say, the minute you say anything that the fanboys don't like, they start shouting and hollering, and they will not see sense. They will not listen to reason. The Switch may well sell well. It may do. It may sell brilliantly. And part of me wishes it will. But part of me also wants it not to do that well. And the reason that is Nintendo themselves. They have anti-consumer attitudes with the way they price things, with their attitude towards YouTubers, and the way they try and claim anything that includes any footage from Nintendo or anything like that. They need to get with the 21st century. They need to start treating people with a little bit more respect. And they need to stop taking the worst things that other developers are doing and taking those on board. They need to be taking the best things that developers are doing. People like CD Projekt Red. They need to be looking at them, not looking at EA and Activision, because they're doing all the wrong things. They need to open up. They need to give us more information, because some of this problem is caused by lack of information too. I would love for information from Nintendo. I would love them to come out and give us specs and not have us all guessing and arguing around this stuff. And I know they probably think this generates buzz and holding back consoles generates buzz. Well, of course, yes, it does, but it also creates bad feeling. And in the long run, that's going to bite them on the ass. And that's exactly what's happening now. Outside of the Nintendo wind tunnels, people like me are fucking pissed off. And that can't be good, because people like me are the people going to my sister and my cousins and saying, this is the console you want to be buying. And okay, it's a biased opinion, but us gamers, the people making YouTube channels, the people listening to this, and the people watching all the other YouTubers out there who are really enthusiastic about games and can be described as games enthusiasts, we're the people who generate the buzz. And all the marketing in the world will only go so far. If the Switch comes out and it doesn't have the support, and it doesn't have the capacity for third party, and it doesn't have the power for third party, people will begin to hear, and it will stop selling, and then it will die. And that will be Nintendo's fault and the Nintendo fanboys' fault, because they weren't prepared to tell Nintendo when they were fucking up. Anyway, that's what I think. You guys may agree with me. You guys may disagree with me. I know some of you are going to vehemently disagree with me, and that's fine. Come in the comments and we can talk about it. Sorry, this is a long one, but I had to get this off my chest. So, yeah, anyway, I really do need a cup of tea today. I'm going to go and get one now, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye. Oh, and thanks for sticking with it. Bye.